The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to Season 7 of the Pool Guy Podcast Show. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in and for making this show so successful. It's actually in the top 2% of all podcasts out there in every category, and it has over 1,150,000 downloads. So I appreciate all of you for tuning in each day, and I hope you find Season 7 just as informative as the other seasons of this podcast. Today I'm going to talk to you about ways that I speed up the filter cleaning process on my route. When you're doing 60 or 70 filters every 4 to 6 months, you really have to find ways to speed things up out there. Otherwise, it just becomes really draining and tiresome to do these filters. So I'm going to go over some things that I've done over the years to kind of make this bearable and to speed things up out there. Pool Service Pro, open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. The first thing I'll do is I'll break down the filters by type and clean the D filters first and the cartridge filters second on my route. Now you don't have to do this, but I find that cleaning the D filters all at once, kind of you get the paint out of the way and you carry the DE for that period of time. You carry the extra grids, you carry the O-rings for those filter tanks, and it makes it much easier when you split the cartridge and D filters on your route. Now in my area, it's about 50-50 or 60-40. So it's one of those things where it makes logical sense to do this. If you're in Florida, of course, or somewhere where it's mainly cartridge filters, it may still make sense to do the D filters first. It's just going to be a lot quicker to get them knocked out. I find the D filters are not what you would consider more time consuming to clean than the cartridge filters. However, there's more involved in a D filter, so you may take it apart and find cracks in the grids, or the top manifold might have a crack. These are things that you have to deal with on the spot. And I find that if I'm taking different grids to the stops and I have, I don't really want to carry the grids in my truck for a whole month. So I'll take all the D grids that I think I need. I usually have, 3 or 4 60 square foot, and I'll know which day I'm going to, which filter they have, so I can take some grids out of my truck and put the other grids in that I need. I have a 4-door truck, so I put the grids in the back seat. I don't like carrying the grids in the bed. I've had grids fly out, unfortunately, and I don't think it's a smart thing to do, but you could if you put them in there carefully. I just put them in the back seat of my truck, and I usually will carry the grids for that day. So if I have some 48 square foot D filters, I'll have the grids on my truck for that. And I also know which filters I'm doing that day because I have the O-rings for those filters also. So this is really important. They have all the parts you're going to need for the D filter during the time you're cleaning the D filter. So I'll carry the pressure gauge for the top of them. Everything I need for the D filters will be in my truck at that time. I'll have an extra top manifold, and I usually carry the Pentair brand because most of my filters are the FNS Plus filters on my route. But I'll have a top manifold for a Hayward and Jandy filter also. And so you see I have all the parts I need for the D filters. I have the grids in my truck. I have the O-rings, I have any kind of pressure gauges that I may need to replace or air bleeders, and I also have the top manifolds, which tend to crack often, so you want to make sure you have those parts. The reason why I carry these parts is that I don't want to get to a D filter, take it apart, and notice that there's a crack on top, have to leave it open, apart, for a day, go get the part that I need to come back to that filter. I want to be able to take that D filter apart, and if I need to put a part in there, stem O-ring, the top manifold, a grid, I'll have that on my truck. Now there's a rule of thumb that I use when I change the grids in a D filter. If I need to change more than 3 grids, I'll just tell the customer they need a whole new grid assembly, or a whole new set of grids I should say, and then I'll go to the store and buy the 8 grids and put those in the customer's D filter if needed. I'll usually know ahead of time how old the grids are when I clean it, and I'll make notes about the filter, and I'll make a note saying, this filter is going to need 8 grids. Usually I go about 3 or 4 years before changing all the grids. Sometimes the filters have more pressure than others, and they have grids that tear more often. It's just one of those things where it depends on the pool, but most of them will last, and you may have one that tears here and there, and you have to replace it. So I do carry the spare grids in my truck for the filters I'm doing that day. So if I have 48 square foot D filters or 60 square foot, I'll have those grids available. On rare occasions, I'll have a couple 72 square foot 2000 series filters, and I have those grids also for those. But typically, I'll know when I do all 8 grids, and if the manifold is getting old on top, I'll sell the customer a complete assembly. That's with the manifold and the 8 grids all set, all ready to go in. And you want to keep notes on when you change the grids and when the grids are due on the customer's filters. That way you can get them ahead of time, and you can carry the box of grids in the back of your truck. And then when you get to that account, you're just going to take all the grids out and put a new set of grids in at that time. So being kind of organized and knowing when you're going to change out the grids in the customer's D filter is really important and a big time saver. But once in a while, you'll clean a D filter and notice one of the grids is cracked and there's like leaves sticking out of it. Then you'll have the grid on your truck to change that out. That's really important in my opinion. And I like to carry the DE only when I need it. And so I'll carry it for the run of D filters, and then I'll just switch over the cartridge filters at that point, take out all the extra grids, all the extra parts, and now I'm set up to clean the cartridge filters on my route. I like doing the D filters first because to me they're the messiest. They take extra time sometimes if you clean them on an all cement kind of equipment pad. You're hosing off that deck, and then the customer invariably will text you or call you saying, "Hey, I know you cleaned the filter, but I see white powder everywhere still." And that's the drawback with DE. So sometimes you're hosing off the deck the week later. Sometimes there's no good area to clean the DE filter. So to me, they're more of a pain, and they take more, mental capacity, I guess you could say, to do the D filters and the cartridge filter. The cartridge filters are easy. You just take the lid off and hose them off. It doesn't really matter where you hose them off. I usually find a drain somewhere and hose off the cartridge filters into the drain. So now I'm doing the cartridge filters, and I should take a pause here and just mention that the Multi-Tork socket set, I did a podcast not too long ago about the sockets. I think these are an essential thing that you need on your pool route to clean the filters and to get the clamps on and off faster. It does save you a lot of time and effort. So the Multi-Tork socket set, you can go to multitork.com. That's multi-tork.com, and you can look at the different sockets he has available. But I highly recommend the Multi-Tork socket sets to speed up your filter cleaning time. They're a great tool and a great asset. You just need to invest in a pretty good cordless drill. I like the Home Depot Rigid brand. I think they're pretty well made. And get one with a lot of torque. That way you can get those clamps on and off. You're still going to need the rubber mallet to kind of get the clamp on tight. But the Multi-Tork saves you a huge amount of time with your filter cleaning. And they have the sockets for the Stay Right System 3, for the Pentair 4000 and 2000 series, for the Pentair FNS Plus, for the Hayward filters, for the Jandy filters. They work on the waterway filters. They work on the jacuzzi filters. So these are very multifaceted and universal type sockets. If you get all of them, you're going to be able to clean all the filters and use these on the clamps to get them off very rapidly and to put them back on very easily. So with the cartridge filters, there are many tools you can use to kind of speed up your day out there. There's a Cyclone filter cleaning tool. You can learn more about that at cyclonefiltertools.com. Again, that's cyclonefiltertools.com. You've probably seen my video with this. It's got these bearings and a rod and a stand, and you put the cartridge on there, and you can use this to hose off the cartridge much more rapidly without bending over. I think it's a great tool. He has a bag now for it, so you can put everything in there and take it back to your stop. It's one more accessory, yes, but it's something that's going to save your back, because normally you would put the cartridge on the floor. I mean, you could put it on a little chair back there, bring a stool with you, but this makes it easy. It actually spins the cartridge as you're hosing it off. It comes with his own nozzle, and you can definitely use this tool to speed up your cartridge cleaning time out on your route. It's one of those things where you have to think if it's worth the investment into it. Again, you can learn more at cyclonefiltertools.com. I think this podcast sounds a little bit like an infomercial there with the Multi-Tork and the Cyclone, but I wanted to throw that in there, and they don't pay me to throw them out there. Definitely, these are things that will speed up your route. If you're going to use a nozzle to hose off a D grids or the cartridges, to me, I think the best nozzle is the Orbit Sunmate, and this is the 58361N, and it's a zinc sweep nozzle with a shutoff. Again, that's the Orbit Sunmate hose end 58361N. You can get this on Amazon. You used to be able to pick them up at Walmart for like $3. I would grab a bunch of them whenever I saw them there, and I still have a couple that I had from Walmart still. But you can order them on Amazon. You can get one for like $9 or $10. You can get two for $15. To me, these are the best nozzles to use when you're cleaning the cartridges and when you're cleaning off DE grids, because it really makes even the lowest pressure high pressure, and it speeds up your day out there. And they're compact. You can put them in your pocket. I wear an apron when I do the filter cleanings, and the reason why I wear an apron is because you get pretty dirty out there cleaning them. Even if you're careful, you're going to get dirt on you, especially from the DE cleaning, and the apron really helps. And I just put the Orbit nozzle in my apron pocket, and then you can definitely pull it out, put it on any hose. And speaking of hoses, typically your client's hose is junk. I mean, the front where you put a nozzle on is all crushed and run over, or the hose has holes in it, or it's just not effective. So I like to carry a hose with me in my truck. And I used to carry just a regular garden hose, but that's kind of a hassle now, especially since they have all these hoses that kind of expand. I like them. You guys got to be careful with them, especially around rose bushes or anywhere sharp, because they can tear very easily. And they work really well, and you can get really long hoses, like 75 feet. That's the one I carry right now. And so they're called expandable garden hoses. You can find them at Home Depot or on Amazon. They're like $30 to $40 for a good one. You get one for like $20 too, I guess. And they last pretty much 1 or 2 seasons, because then they start to tear, and they have like a metal part with the expandable area that kind of wears out over time. But I like them because they're light, and you can carry them no problem, and you can get a really long one in case you have to attach it and walk far away. But always have your own garden hose, because invariably the customer will have a hose that's not effective. I think if you're going percentage-wise, over half the customers have a hose that's not effective to be used to clean filters. Sometimes you're going to need to attach your hose to their hose to give yourself more length anyway. But carry a hose with you. You're going to find it's the best investment and the best thing you thought of, because you'll get to a stop one time and the hose where you put the nozzle on is all crushed and run over or broken, and you're going to be like, how am I going to clean this? How am I going to clean this filter? I can't get my nozzle on. But if you brought your own hose, you would not have that problem. And so when I clean the cartridge filters, I usually will switch out the O-rings. Sometimes you have specific O-rings for the cartridge filters, and you want to carry enough O-rings to get through the filter cleaning period. They're not universal, so you have to have an O-ring for the Hayward filters, for the Jandy, for the Pentair filters. And I usually change the O-ring whenever I have trouble getting the lid back on. And I guess the worst is when you put the lid back on and it starts dripping, and you're kind of like kicking yourself, and you have to take the lid off again. But with the Multi-Tork, that's pretty easy to do. And I like to change the O-ring whenever I'm trying to put the lid on and I notice that it's not going on really easily. Then I definitely change that O-ring. I like to use the Boss silicone spray when I put the O-rings on. You can use any RV grade silicone spray. If you go to AutoZones, they should have an RV grade silicone spray. If you can't find the Boss is a purple can. You can order on Amazon, but it's a little expensive, and it's cheaper if you buy it at AutoZone or Walmart. Sometimes Home Depot will have the Boss silicone spray in stock. Your supplier may have it. Some suppliers carry it. I like the silicone spray over the Magic Lube for a number of reasons. Number one, it seems to make the O-rings last longer. I had an engineer on my route, and he saw me using it, and he said, yeah, that's a smart thing you're doing, because the silicone lube will actually massage the O-ring and make it last longer. I don't know what he was talking about, but he verified the fact that what I've discovered by using the silicone spray, the O-rings do last longer and they hold up better. I just put a generous amount around the O-ring when I'm going around. I just walk around and spray it. And you can also use magic lube. I find that to be extremely messy. You get it all over the place on your fingers, and then when you take the filter lid off to clean it, the magic lube is still on there. It's just one of those components that I don't like. It makes your job even messier. It's effective, and I use it on situations where I really need to get the O-ring on and it's giving me trouble, so I'll use a gob of magic lube all over the place. But I prefer the silicone spray. It's much cleaner, easier, the lid goes on no problem, and as the engineer on my route said, it kind of massages the O-ring and it makes it last longer. So definitely the silicone spray is something you want to carry and have several cans available. I'll leave them at a stop on accident once in a while and be kicking myself, but I have 3 or 4 in my truck, so it's not a big deal. And you're going to leave stuff behind, so have extra nozzles, have extra silicone spray. You don't want to leave your drill behind. I've only done that a couple times, but that's something that you unfortunately may do once in a while, and you don't want to go back to the shop sometimes, so have yourself some socket wrenches for the filters, but be really careful and try to be as organized as you can and put all your tools back in there. But definitely I've left nozzles on the customer's hose before, and I've left silicone spray back there, so that does happen. But bottom line, carry plenty of grids, carry plenty of O-rings, and make notes of the parts the customer needs on their filter. With the cartridge filters, I go about 3 years before changing the four cartridge type filters out. And so I'll make a note of when I put the new cartridges in, and then I'll make a note when they're due. And so I won't clean that cartridge filter the time it's due for a replacement. And this is something that I want to emphasize too. It's also a time saver, and it's logical, and it's kind of a money saver for the client. But when they need new grids, a new grid set, or new cartridge filters put in, I'll make sure I time it so that when I'm doing the filter cleaning period, I'll put the 8 new grids in for the customer, charge them the markup for that, of course, on the product and for the install. And the same with the cartridge filter. So you actually save a cleaning of a filter, and sometimes it's significant. You may have 5 cartridge filters you're changing the cartridges at that time, or 4D filters you're putting new grids in. So that saves you some time out there also. So be really diligent about making notes in your app or on paper, depending on how you do your filter logging, so that you know when you're going to change the grids, when you're going to change the cartridges, when you change them last, and that way you have accurate records. And you're not going to clean someone's cartridge filter and realize that, oh, this is one that I had to change this year. I'll have to wait 6 more months and try to get by. And you don't want to waste the time doing that. You want to be diligent with your note keeping so that you know which cartridges you're going to change that year, which grids you're going to change. Also be diligent on your supplies. When you're putting O-rings on people's filters, make a note so you can get the O-ring replacement for your inventory. The last thing you want to do is get to a filter, not have the O-ring for it, have to run to your supplier, and waste about an hour because you didn't have the O-ring on your truck. So be really diligent about spare parts, carrying everything in your truck that you need for that day. I always check the night before to make sure which pools I'm going to do the filter on, what parts I have in my truck, and make sure I have enough parts to get through that day. If you have 2 of the same filter, you of course need to have more than 2 O-rings, that way in case both filters need an O-ring. And I ran into this one time where I was doing a lot of 2000 series filters. I had a bunch of them on my route for years, and finally I got most of them cut out and I don't have to deal with them. But basically one time I was doing 4 in one day, which is not unusual for back in that era. And I was kind of counting my O-rings and I only had 3. And I was like, well, what are the odds of all 4 2000 series tanks needing a new O-ring? Well, you guessed it. The odds were all 4 of them needed that day, and I had 3 O-rings. So don't put yourself in that position. Always have enough parts to get through your filter cleaning day, and it's going to make things much smoother for you and easier out there. If you're looking for other podcasts that I recorded, you can find them on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com, and you can click on the podcast icon. That'll take you to a drop-down menu of other podcasts I recorded. And if you're interested in the coaching program, you can learn more about that at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.